From Maid to Mrs. Alfreds, the wedding of the decade turns into a baby drama. Who shows up uninvited? Final part below. The penthouse was eerily quiet, save for the faint clink of porcelain as Eleanor Alfreds stirred her tea with the precision of a woman who had spent a lifetime commanding rooms without raising her voice. The scent of bergamot and lemon curled through the air, a sharp contrast to the tension thickening between us. I gripped my own cup, my fingers trembling slightly. Eleanor had insisted on brewing the tea herself, her tone laced with that familiar, imperious amusement. "You'd poison it with incompetence," she'd said. And though her words were barbed, there was something almost fond in the way she'd nudged me aside. Then, without preamble, she shattered the silence. "Your grandfather started as a gardener," Eleanor said, her voice crisp as autumn leaves underfoot. The words landed like a gunshot. I froze, the teacup halfway to my lips. A gardener? The Alfreds' name was synonymous with old money, with power, not dirt-stained hands and humble beginnings. Paul, seated beside me, choked on his tea, coughing violently, his eyes wide with disbelief, locked onto his grandmother. "You never told me that," he managed, his voice hoarse. Eleanor's lips curled, not quite a smile. "Because the Alfreds' name means something now," she said, her gaze flicking to me. "But bloodlines aren't built on money, girl. They're built on grit." Her gnarled hand, adorned with rings that had seen decades of boardroom battles, covered mine. The warmth of her touch was unexpected. "That child," she nodded to my stomach, "is more Alfreds than any of those boardroom vultures." Paul looked shell-shocked, his fingers tightening around his cup. "Does father know you're here?" Eleanor's smile turned razor-sharp. "He'll find out when the paperwork goes through." With the flourish of a queen presenting a decree, she pulled an envelope from her purse and slid it across the table. "My 30% stake in Alfreds Industries, transferred to you, effective immediately." The room tilted. 30%. That was billions. Control, security, a future I'd never dared to dream of. "But why?" I whispered, my throat tight. Eleanor studied me, her sharp eyes missing nothing. "Because unlike my idiot son, I recognize strength when I see it." She stood abruptly, her cane tapping against the marble floor like a metronome counting down to revolution. "Now," she said, pausing at the doorway. "When's the wedding?" Just as the door began to close behind her, Eleanor stopped. "One more thing." She tossed a newspaper onto the table. It landed with a slap, the headline screaming in bold black ink. A grainy paparazzi photo showed Victoria at an airport, sunglasses hiding her eyes, her usually pristine blonde hair disheveled. Paul's shocked laugh filled the penthouse, bright and disbelieving. "How?" Eleanor winked, the gesture sly and satisfied. "Turns out the girl had a skeleton or two in her closet. Nannygate 2012. Very interesting reading." And with that, the door clicked shut, leaving us in stunned silence. I stared at the newspaper, my mind racing. Nannygate? Had Victoria? Before I could finish the thought, Paul turned to me, his eyes blazing with hope. "Katie Wilson," he breathed, reaching for my hands. "Will you?" I kissed him before he could finish. The answer had always been yes. The Alfreds mansion loomed before us, its wrought iron gates now open wide, as if in surrender. The last time I'd stood here, I'd been in a maid's uniform, invisible. Now, my fingers laced with Paul's, I stepped forward as family. Inside, the grand foyer was filled with the murmur of voices and the clink of crystal. The entire Alfreds clan was there. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all dressed in their finery, their expressions a mix of curiosity and reluctant acceptance. And at the center of it all stood Mr. Alfreds, his jaw tight, his eyes flicking to my obvious bump before he muttered, "Welcome home." Paul's hand tightened around mine, a silent promise. "You belong here." Eleanor, seated in a throne-like chair by the fireplace, smirked into her champagne. As the butler, not me, never me again, offered me a flute of sparkling cider, the weight of the moment settled over me. Some love stories begin in the shadows, but the best ones step into the light. The morning of our wedding dawned with golden sunlight spilling through the curtains of the Alfreds guest suite, my suite now. The ivory lace of my gown shimmered as I stood before the mirror, my hands tracing the delicate embroidery. It was a dress fit for a fairy tale, yet the woman staring back at me still felt like Katie Wilson, the maid's daughter. "You look." Paul's voice came from the doorway, rough with emotion. "Absolutely breathtaking." He crossed the room in 3 strides, his tuxedo immaculate, his dark hair slightly tousled from nervous hands. But it was his eyes, wide, awed, devoted, that stole my breath. His palm came to rest gently on my rounded stomach, where our baby kicked in greeting. "Ready to become Mrs. Alfreds?" he murmured against my lips. I laughed nervously. "As long as your mother doesn't have me arrested at the altar." The ceremony was set in the Alfreds' rose garden, Eleanor's doing. "If we're breaking tradition," she'd declared, "we may as well make a spectacle of it." Half of high society had come, their whispers slithering through the air like snakes as I walked down the petal-strewn aisle. That's the maid. Pregnant before the ring. How vulgar. I kept my chin high, my eyes locked on Paul, who stood waiting for me, his gaze fierce with pride. Then the music screeched to a halt. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Victoria Smith stood framed in the garden archway, her cream pantsuit a deliberate mockery of bridal white. "I object," she announced coolly. In the hastily commandeered sitting room, Victoria dropped her bomb with a smirk. "Prenatal paternity test results. Turns out Paul isn't the father." The room spun. Paul snatched the papers, his face darkening as he scanned them. Then, laughter. Raw, relieved laughter. "These are dated before Katie and I were together," he said, tossing them aside. "Nice try." Victoria's smile faltered. Eleanor, silent until now, stood with the grace of a queen. "Ah, yes. The real test results came to me last week." She pulled another envelope from her handbag. 99.9% Alfred's DNA. "Would you like to explain why you falsified documents, Miss Smith?" Victoria paled. Eleanor nodded to security. "Escort her out, and do remind her that blackmail is a felony." As Victoria was led away, shrieking, Paul pulled me close. "Still want to marry me?" I kissed him instead of answering. We said our I-do's as the sunset painted the gardens in gold. Paul's voice never wavered as he slid a diamond-encrusted band onto my finger, the same one his grandfather had given Eleanor decades ago. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, the Alfreds family, even Paul's once resistant parents, stood and applauded. Then our baby kicked so hard my dress moved. Paul's joyous laugh echoed through the gardens as he dropped to his knees and pressed his lips to my stomach. "I love you both so damn much." Our honeymoon was magical. The Eiffel Tower shimmered in the distance, its golden lights reflecting in the Seine like a promise. I stood on the balcony of our penthouse suite in the Hôtel de Crillon, wrapped in a silk robe and a blanket Paul had stolen from the bed. Somewhere inside, baby Henry was asleep, finally. Paul slipped behind me, arms around my waist. "Still can't believe you're my wife." "Still can't believe we're in Paris," I whispered, leaning into him. "Remember when we were kids and you said you'd buy all my paintings here?" He smiled. "Now you can paint them from this balcony and sell them to me at an outrageous price." The suite was unreal. Crystal chandeliers, velvet drapes, and a bathtub the size of our first apartment's kitchen. In the morning, we fed Henry croissants in bed. He made more mess than progress, giggling every time Paul wiped chocolate off his cheeks. Paul snapped a photo of me laughing with Henry in my lap. "That's the one I want for our wall at home." "Which wall?" I teased. "You mean the one in the estate or the one in the New York apartment?" He grinned. "All of them. Every wall, every floor, every room. You and him, everywhere." Later that afternoon, Paul wore a hoodie and sunglasses, Billionaire disguise 101, and we strolled hand in hand through Montmartre's cobbled streets. Painters lined the sidewalks. Paul nudged me. "Pick one, anyone. I want a painting of you in Paris." I chose an old man with paint-splattered sleeves who grinned when I sat on a nearby bench, Henry snoozing in the stroller. "You love me in a maid's uniform," I said as Paul took a seat beside me, watching the artist sketch. I love you in any uniform, he said, brushing my hair behind my ear. But this version of you, happy, free, glowing, you're unstoppable. That night, with Henry asleep in his travel crib, his tiny chest rising and falling in perfect rhythm, Paul and I danced barefoot in our suite. The plush carpet cushioned our steps as we swayed together, the city of Paris glowing beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. The Eiffel Tower twinkled in the distance, its golden light casting delicate shadows across the room. No music, no cameras, just the sound of Paris outside, the faint hum of distant traffic, the occasional laughter drifting up from the streets below, the gentle rustle of the evening breeze against the glass. You know, he murmured, his voice low and warm against my ear. We never got a real honeymoon dance. His fingers traced slow circles on my back, pulling me even closer. So dance with me now, I said, tilting my head up to meet his gaze. The soft light caught the flecks of gold in his eyes, the same way it had that very first night we met. He twirled me once, my bare feet brushing against his. Twice, my hair spinning out before settling against my shoulders. Then he pulled me close, his strong arms wrapping around me, one hand drifting to rest gently on our baby's first photo, now framed and sitting on the dresser, a tiny, perfect moment frozen in time. He twirled me once, twice, then pulled me close, resting his hand on our baby's first photo, now framed and sitting on the dresser. No more boardrooms, no more secrets, he promised. Just us, for as long as you'll have me. I kissed him softly. Forever started the day you followed me into that kitchen. And just like that, under Paris lights and whispered vows, our happily ever after truly began. The Alfreds' Christmas gala was in full swing when little Henry Alfreds made his grand entrance, sticky fingers clutching a stolen gingerbread cookie, his father's golden curls bouncing as he barreled through the crowd. Mommy, Daddy, look what Nanny Eleanor gave me. I scooped him up, laughing as he smeared frosting on my designer gown, which I still wasn't used to wearing instead of cleaning around. Paul wrapped his arms around us both, pressing a kiss to my temple. Remember when you thought you didn't belong here? Henry giggled as I nuzzled his nose. Turns out I was wrong. From her throne-like chair, Eleanor raised her champagne glass in a silent toast. Her knowing smile said it all. Love didn't care about social status. And the greatest fortunes weren't measured in dollars, but in moments like these.